Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a crisp $10 bill. Today, that might cover a fast food meal for two, a streaming subscription, or maybe a small bag of groceries if you are lucky. But travel back to the 1950s in America, and that same $10 bill transforms into something almost unrecognizable by modern standards. It carried genuine weight, real purchasing power, and the ability to cover a meaningful slice of everyday life. To truly understand what $10 meant back then, you have to step inside the world of post-war America, a nation buzzing with optimism, rebuilding itself after years of wartime sacrifice, and experiencing an economic boom that was reshaping the very fabric of daily existence. The 1950s were a decade of suburban expansion, rising wages, and a consumer culture that was just beginning to flex its muscles. Families were moving into newly built homes, buying their first television sets, and filling refrigerators with foods that had once been rationed. Against this backdrop, $10 was not pocket change. It was a tool, a resource, and, in many households, a carefully managed piece of the weekly budget. Adjusted for inflation, $10 in 1950 would be equivalent to somewhere around $120 to $130 today, depending on the specific year within the decade and the category of goods being measured. That gap alone tells a powerful story about how dramatically the value of money has shifted over the decades. One of the most striking ways to measure the power of that $10 bill is through the lens of food. Grocery prices in the 1950s were remarkably low by any modern comparison. A pound of ground beef could be purchased for around 50 to 60 cents. A dozen eggs might set you back about 60 cents. A loaf of bread was roughly 15 to 20 cents. A pound of butter hovered around 70 cents. Fresh vegetables like potatoes, carrots, and cabbage were available for just a few cents per pound. When you start adding these numbers up, it becomes clear that $10 could stock a family kitchen for a significant portion of the week, if not the entire week, depending on family size and eating habits. A careful shopper in 1950s America could walk into a grocery store with $10 and walk out with a genuinely substantial haul. Think about a pound of coffee for around 80 cents, a can of soup for 10 cents, a bag of flour for 25 cents, and fresh chicken for around 30 cents per pound. These were not luxury items. They were the everyday staples of American households, and $10 could cover a wide and varied selection of them. Dining out was also surprisingly affordable. A sit-down meal at a local diner, complete with a main course, side dish, and a cup of coffee, could easily come in under $1. A family of four could enjoy a modest restaurant outing and still have change left over from a $5 bill, meaning $10 could cover two such outings with money to spare. Beyond food, $10 stretched impressively across other essential categories of daily life. Transportation in the 1950s looked very different from today. The average price of a gallon of gasoline was around 25 to 30 cents. That means $10 could fill up an entire gas tank and then some, covering hundreds of miles of driving. For those relying on public transportation, a city bus fare was typically around 10 to 15 cents, meaning $10 could fund dozens of individual trips across town. The automobile itself was becoming a central symbol of American life during this era, and while a new car was certainly beyond the reach of a $10 bill, the cost of maintaining and fueling one was genuinely manageable on a working-class income. Utility costs were similarly modest. The average monthly electricity bill for an American household in the 1950s was somewhere in the range of $3 to $5. That means $10 could cover 2 months of keeping the lights on, running the refrigerator, and powering the television set that was increasingly becoming the centerpiece of the American living room. A telephone bill for basic local service ran about $3 to $4 per month. Heating costs varied by region and fuel type, but coal and oil were both available at prices that kept monthly expenses well within the reach of average working families. $10 in this context was not just spending money. It was a genuine contribution to the operational costs of running a household. The 1950s were also a golden age of affordable entertainment, and $10 could buy a remarkable amount of leisure and enjoyment. A movie ticket at the local cinema cost around 50 cents to 75 cents for adults. That means $10 could send a family of 4 to the movies multiple times over, with popcorn and sodas included. Drive-in theaters, which were enormously popular during this decade, charged per car rather than per person, making a night out even more economical. A carload of friends or family could enjoy a double feature for around $1, making $10 the equivalent of 10 nights of outdoor cinematic entertainment. Music was another area where $10 went a long way. A vinyl record, the dominant music format of the era, typically cost around 75 cents to $1. $10 could build a small but meaningful record collection, bringing the sounds of artists like Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, or the emerging rock and roll pioneers directly into the living room. Clothing was also far more affordable relative to wages than it is today in many respects. A decent pair of men's trousers could be found for around $3 to $4. A woman's dress might cost $4 to $6 at a department store. Children's clothing was even more economical. $10 could outfit a child for a season, or purchase a solid wardrobe edition for an adult. Shoes ranged from about $3 to $6, depending on style and quality, meaning $10 could cover a new pair with money left over for accessories or other small necessities. To fully appreciate what $10 meant in 1950s America, it helps to place it within the broader economic context of the era. The median household income in the United States during the early 1950s was approximately $3,500 per year, which works out to roughly $67 per week. $10 therefore represented about 15% of a typical weekly household income. That is a meaningful chunk of money, not a trivial sum, but also not an insurmountable amount for a working family to access. The post-war economic boom had created a rising middle class with genuine purchasing power, and the relatively low cost of goods meant that even modest incomes could support comfortable, stable lives. Home ownership was becoming increasingly accessible, with modest suburban homes available for around $8,000 to $12,000, and mortgage rates and terms that made monthly payments manageable for working families. A $10 bill in this environment was a versatile and powerful financial instrument. It could feed a family, fuel a car, cover utilities, provide entertainment, and contribute to the small daily expenses that make up the texture of ordinary life. What makes this exercise in historical purchasing power so compelling is not just the nostalgia it evokes, but the clarity it provides about how inflation, economic policy, wage growth, and consumer culture have collectively transformed the relationship between Americans and their money. The $10 bill has not changed in size, color, or denomination, but its story has shifted dramatically across the decades, serving as a quiet but powerful record of everything that has changed in the American economic experience since those optimistic, prosperous years of the post-war era.